Right, guys. Attempt number 2. Now I've remembered to turn the microphone on. Let's try this again. So today I'm out here with my buddy Rich. Will we try this one before? Well, because we're talking about time today. We're talking about time, and then Rich made a reference to the drummer, Buddy Rich. So, but I think for both me and Rich, we both neglected our time for a long time. Obviously, we came from the background of rock, and I feel that many players who come from a rock background move into the jazz world, and they realize that, you know, a different kind of ability to hold time is required. So, one of the methods Rich used to develop his time was the Indian time system Konnakol, and which I don't know much about. Obviously, I've watched the John McLaughlin DVD on the matter, but essentially I only know the very basics of it. But I've also got things that I worked on to improve my time. So what are your thoughts then, Rich?
Yeah, right. So if I maybe think of it in 2 ways. One, people talk about being good at time, and that might be good at the kind of sophisticated elements of time, like, oh, we can play in odd time signatures, can play complex polyrhythms and all this fancy sort of fusion stuff, which is definitely one angle of when people talk about being good at time. But I think the bit that's more elusive is how good you are, how comfortable one is just generally with beat and meter at an absolute fundamental level, and the satisfaction that somebody playing, I don't know, them even open chords with a great time feel is more powerful than, say, somebody with who maybe doesn't have that, but is playing complicated material which really on paper is okay, but just doesn't have that good feeling. You know, I would argue that the open G chords playing with a fundamental good time feel is the more powerful thing.
I agree. I was actually talking to my friend from the Guitar Vacation channel earlier on this. We met up online, and we were talking about different approaches to time feel. And if you take a player like Wayne Krantz or Brian Baker, they have very much worked on their time with the metronome.
Yeah.
And they've got a very kind of disciplined, perfect sense of time.
But can I stop you there? But I sort of thought of something. You mentioned that me and you neglected our time, but we probably both did work with metronomes back in the early stage, because, you know, you're not daft. You can see the logic of a metronome. And I didn't know the stuff with the metronome. And it probably got to a certain level. But I don't think that scratched at the... What? The difficult thing is, I think you've got to be really good at time to develop an awareness of where your time is lacking, and an intermediate player, I'm sure, could follow a metronome pretty well, but that's not actually digging deep enough, and I think what good time actually is that there's a multicasting side to all of this. And I think it gets you back to kind of origins of dance and movement, where people are moving and then they're singing a thing, that's singing a rhythm, they may be capping a different rhythm. They're doing it from a very early age, when they're sort of during formative years. They're having a lot of fun while doing it, and they're in a group of people who are also doing it. They're also in a group of people who are possibly clapping or singing something different at the same time. And that's what gets a supremely relaxed time feel. Not sitting with a metronome, as important that is, or maybe it's the only resource you've got if you're not part of a dancing, clapping community.
Well, I agree with you on that, actually. And because I'm not one of these guitar players who has been so disciplined with a metronome like you can hear in the likes of Wayne Krantz. I love hearing that, but I'm far more of the school of players like Kurt Rosenwinkel, who's very much developed his sense of time through working with incredible drummers and picking it up kind of on the job. And if you listen to Kurt Rosenwinkel's sense of time, it's far looser.
Yeah.
Almost like a drummer like Elvin Jones.
Yeah.
If you listen to the Coltrane recordings, they'll start at one speed, and then by the end of the recording, they'll have sped up as the intensity grows.
You check this in the Konnakol. I mean, they're having a lovely time on stage. They're getting into it. In this music of breathing, and the speeding up, as they get excited, they slow down. But everyone's listening, everyone's following. And it always feels relaxed.
Yeah, and this kind of gets lost in this kind of post Neil Peart kind of prog and metal and stuff. It's very much about keeping the same tempo throughout the tune.
Interesting you mentioned Neil Peart, because so I ended up studying with a great drummer in London called Asaf Circus, and he told me a tale that at one point all roads led to a guy called Freddie Gruber, and Neil Peart and I think Steve Smith were two like famous drummers who already had careers and high profile job. And they felt Gunnar was lacking, and it was because there wasn't this lightness that they were after. And they all went to see Freddie Gruber. And he was like, if I remember it rightly, I think he was a top dancer. So you're very much into the movement thing, whether you see they did the whole, wasn't quite mullet technique and stuff. I don't know if I remember the tales rightly. It would be the kind of lesson you would go to, and there'd be like a 2-hour discussion about gardening. And then finally you'd get to the point that no one would ever say a thing because they were with kind of a rhythm Yoda. But yeah, it was just like you mentioned Neil Peart.
Yeah, well,
And it comes back to the movement thing,
Well, that's the thing, yeah. The movement and music is very, very interrelated. I didn't, I neglected that when I was younger. And when I played the violin, I was very stiff. It wasn't until I studied Dalcroze, which is the study of movement and music.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And that kind of unlocked the importance of the body moving with what you play. Obviously, I feel some people overdo this, and I'm not saying you need to kind of do a gurn face like Gary Moore or all of this kind of stuff, but there has to be a looseness.
I remember in an old interview with Acoustic Guitar Magazine, an American guitar magazine, there was a guitar chair which seemed to be it was on kind of hinges and pulleys or something, and the idea was that you bought this chair and you would sway your body in time with the music, but you had to have the bloody chair, which was like a artisanal made wooden.
Well, that it's extremely important, isn't it?
Well, a stool would do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I used to think that time was counting rather than kind of like an internal thing. And obviously in classical music, you've got this term called rubato. And for me, rubato meant just do whatever you want, play it when you want. I never understood that it meant play how you want to in the sense of time, but in relation to the time. And this is what I missed for many years.
No, this is going to sort of contradict one of my theories. So you've already contradicted it, so I might have to think again. But the theory was, and it might be the subject for another tour, what is the difference of having a classical background when you in your formative years, or even your dad an organ player, is that right?
Yeah, he plays organ. He's a composer, really. But yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know, holding up to roundabout. So I used to teach at school, and after a few years, they wanted me to teach the prep school, and I didn't have a clue. I kind of panicked a bit at how on earth am I going to do this, and because it's like 4-year-old, right? And but they had ukuleles, so it ended up basically teaching nursery rhymes, and the average 4-year-old is absolutely stoked if he can play something like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in front of his classmates. Your 14-year-old kid isn't going to care about that, but your 4-year-old is, because it's making anything sound like a tune straight away. Everyone thinks it's wonderful, and it kind of is. And it drove home the beauty of playing a very simple bit of music with a good time feel, because Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, we only think 5 notes. Pretty much each note is repeated twice, which is great, but you're not like changing notes the whole time, or it's not a hard piece to learn. But you kind of make it groove, and you naturally make it groove. I mean, it comes simple, you could sing it, and I think melody rhyme the design, so obviously you can't. They're got to be easy to teach and easy to sing. But these kids are all playing this simple stuff with a great time feel, because they weren't trying to play Steve Vai or I mean, even AC/DC, which is super syncopated when you got to break it down for a beginner. You realize the complexity of that sort of stuff just because of the nature of the syncopation. I mean, I think as a beginner, you've got to spend an awful lot of time not playing syncopation, because it's back to the multitasking stage. You've got to be able to think of where your fingers are got to go, but you've also got to be thinking of the time thinking of the beat at the same time. And this is, I think, what goes wrong in so many cases. I may be sort of reaching into another topic now.
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, I do feel that my misunderstanding of freedom of time in classical music was detrimental to my sense of time. However, all the greatest classical musicians, like Heifetz or a current guy like Lang Lang, they've got an amazing sense of time. But I do think it's a common thing for classical musicians to misinterpret the freedom of a term like rubato, and that can lead them to not developing as strong a deeper pulse, which is so important in jazz music. I mean, another thing is that as guitarists, we often rely on, when we begin, we often rely on the drummer as the time.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously that is the wrong way to approach this. Everyone should be in sync with their own internal time. It's like you shouldn't be listening to any other musician to hold the time for you.
Yeah. So that brings us back to multitasking, because, again, I think when you go back to basics, there's so much mechanical coordination to do. Like, I think that, the guitar's probably a pretty bad instrument to learn time on, unless it's great if you want to strum chords. But, I mean, a piano is better, because literally the mechanics are just pressing the key. There's a sound. And it's almost like it's a drum kit, right? The piano?
Well, yeah, it's a percussion instrument, yeah, isn't it?
So, sometimes I used to get a kid who was really struggling with the whole time. But we had a drum kit in the classroom, and, we could spend 6 months on the drum kit, like in a 20-minute lesson. And just, it's the musicianship, I think, that's at the key to all this. And this is where I think, and I tip what you're saying about, thinking about the freedom of rubato, that's maybe we're getting a bit next level. I'm just talking about the utter nuts and bolts of, if you can count and play, at least you're fully tasking. Because a lot of people don't count, especially if there's something tricky comes along and you're improvising. I think a lot of people struggle to memorize a chord chart because they're too busy focusing on just one, focusing on the chords, or they're focusing on God knows what else.
Well, I was the same when I was a kid, and I've got students who are the same now. then the notes were my focus and everything else came secondary. But and it took me a long time, although I heard it from more experienced musicians, it took me a long time to truly understand that the rhythm was as important as the melody.
All right, so this brings us to this. I've actually written this one down. How do we teach that? Because you just said people tell you all this well-meaning stuff like, the rhythms are most important, and you hear that as a beginner, and you're trying to learn all this stuff, and you know it's important, but I kind of don't really know. You sort of think you're doing everything right, and then the next thing is, listen to good drummers. But when I'm a beginning musician, a drummer just sounds like a drummer. I don't know enough about music to understand what a good one is. If I like the song, I like the drummer. I like John Bonham, but I'm really love the Led Zeppelin. Something like.
Do you like his fashion sense?
Well,
no, I know what you mean.
But do you know what I mean? Or someone said, listen to Wes. And so you listen to Wes, and it just sounds like a jazz guitar, and okay. Or even James Brown, it sounds like party music. You don't have anything reference. Now, obviously, when I listen to those now, I'm really excited by how amazing the time feels of all these, legendary players. But that didn't help me, back in the day when I was just like, I didn't have a musical background or wasn't really listening to much music when I grew up.
Yeah. Well,
so how do we teach this thing about feeling time? Because, I used to count until, I fell asleep, but didn't help.
Yeah, well, I truly believe that some things can't be taught, per se. And it's very much something that you have to absorb through listening to music, or maybe also like through experiences. Maybe I think like dance would be a good way to adopt this. But I mean, the way that I try and explain it is I'll clap the rhythm of Happy Birthday, and the hope is that the kid recognizes that the tune is Happy Birthday, even though there's no notes involved.
Okay.
So it's just to kind of try and demonstrate the importance of rhythm and how much a rhythm says, even without.
But the problem is
the content of the notes.
As the teacher's face turns blue, explaining the importance of rhythm, and I'm sure the student is so aware of the importance of rhythm, but there's got to be a nuts and bolts way of physically getting that across to this. It actually, you've got to do drills basically. But what I'm getting around to saying, I think I've developed a way of teaching that due to my own inadequacy, basically. And anyway, this is my take on it all. A very good drummer once said to me, and it was through exasperation because he was sick of my crappy time playing. He says you can only play as fast as you can hear the upbeat. And
that's a great expression.
Yeah, and I've thought about that a lot. So at a very simplistic level, just playing on the offbeat is generally if you think of the 16th note offbeat. I mean, most people can play an 8th note offbeat pretty comfortably. Playing a 16th note offbeat, that people come unstuck. And that gets into the whole thing about subdivision. People get it's how strong your sense of the underlying subdivision is. And there's what this drummer said to me says, right, basically there's a sheet of music out of a book called Ted Reed's Citation book, and it's like the Bible for drummers. And he was Ted Reed, I think, was a military line drummer, and I think it's page 3, and every drummer knows about this. And it's just literally, so it's rows of staves. On the bottom of the stave is the quarter note pulse, and then there's just loads of 8 note rhythms. And the idea is that with that page, you can pretty much learn everything you need to know. Whether it's, okay, you can start off by playing the 8th note with your foot, or you can play your 8th note on different drum. But which is no good if you don't have a drum kit. So what you do is, it gets into the whole vocalizing and singing rhythm thing. There's a whole language with that. And this is the way it might tie into Konnakol. Konnakol is possibly, another massive subject, which, there's obviously people who are way better than me, but it's still worth discussing in a jazz guitar context. But maybe it's a different conversation. But it's the vocalization of rhythm, which I think offers a way into this idyllic formative state where you're growing up in a church and you're singing and you're dancing. It basically it distills that experience down into something you can learn. It basically makes rhythm physical. If you imagine playing a rhythm on a bass drum, that's a lot harder than clapping a rhythm because you're moving a big muscle. And so anything you do on the bass drum, you're really internalizing because you have to move half your body to be able to do it. So anyway, so on a very simple level, ta is a downbeat, k is the offbeat. So, and if you imagine like ta, 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 there's a solidity to that. And then k as the hand comes up, k, k, k. It actually feels like you're lifting. So 16th notes would be like k, 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 k. But underneath that, like the duck's legs under the sort of river, I'm thinking tuck and tuck it, tuck it, tuck, tuck it, tuck it, tuck. So that kind of stuff. So there's no instrument involved. I'm not getting distracted by strings or chords or scales. It's just pure with the mechanics of rhythm. And I've got a language with which to sing it. And it's super simple. Let's not get into triplets just yet, but it can be pretty binary. Ta is a down, k is a downbeat, yeah, k is a syncopation, and there's an awful lot you can sort of realise with that. Now, say you've got your book of atonal rhythms. I think a lot of this kind of comes from the Cuban school. So you clap the pulse, but you sing the rhythm. It's sort of traditional to clap a rhythm, but the other way around is kind of interesting. So say we got, 2 eighth notes, whole note, and an eighth note. It's all 4/4. So it'd be like ta 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 ta. Okay. But then what you could do is sing the subdivision like and clap the rhythm. So ta 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 ta. And that takes a bit of doing if you've never done it before, And then I just could well screw this one up. Actually, singing the beat and clap the rhythms can be quite hard. So you sing the beat, ta, what the metronome's doing, right? So ta, 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 ta. That's quite an easy one. If the rhythm's a bit more syncopated, it's actually quite tough. Or maybe sing minims, ta, 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 ta. That's again. I'm having to really think about that sort of stuff. Kind of how drummers sing. Because obviously, it's like an independence, but we're kind of condensing it into a vocal form. And the end result of all that, and if you're just reading through this page, you're getting damn strong. It's one of the most basic levels of tie, just the atonal feel. You're not getting a lot of the time. Say if you're playing a rhythm and somebody plays a different rhythm, you're going to follow them if your time is weak. It's almost like in a choir. If the tenor's unconfident and the alto says something different, that they'll follow a different line. It's holding true to your own sort of thing. Maybe that's what being in the band is. It's those fundamental weaknesses which really can't be sort of strong enough. And I think it's from there that you build your good time from. And once you've mastered that, everything else was a doddle. And I think if you're finding any element of time difficult, whether it's about time singing to polyrhythms or whatever, it can be traced back to a weakness in those absolutely fundamental areas. If you look at Ari Hernig's book, he has a couple of books on polyrhythm and that obviously.
Ari Hernig's wonderful, yeah.
He knows what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
Man, that book is triplets. That's all it is. You're looking for some super duper geek wisdom. It's just triplets, and everything comes from those triplets. And in the book is just exercises on getting super strong with your triplets. In there, you probably realize as you do the exercises, realize how weak the middle leg of the triplet is. Everyone compromises that if they're doing a polyrhythm or something. You would feel the first bit of the triplet, the left bit of the triplet, because that's kind of feels like a shuffle. But getting good with the middle leg of the triplet, if that makes sense, you know. So all these things, you don't know you've got weak spots until you've got an Ari Hernig, or in my case an 𝐴𝐵 or just a damn good drummer who has, you know, it's got some insight to how the whole thing works.
100%. Well, that, I mean, obviously, I listen to the many wonderful Indian musicians demonstrating the Konnakol.
That was wonderful what I was doing there, by the way. That was just a basic rhythmic thing. But
the takadimi and all, I think the that comes from the Konnakol, though, doesn't it?
I wasn't even doing that. See, takadimi is a 4-note unit. We have, like, I'm just literally doing the downbeats and upbeats.
Yeah.
And there is overlap for sure. And I think we should definitely talk about that on another video, because, you know, it's really interesting.
Well, it's a deep concept, isn't it? And obviously, when I hear it demonstrated, the benefits of it are evident in what you hear. You know, in the mastery that these guys have got of time.
Sorry, I knew this would happen. Everything is a nugget to get explored. So Asa went on tour with Jeff Berlin. Now, they're based there, I'm sure everyone knows. And now Jeff Berlin is like, he was Jack, he was Aussie.
Jack Brute,
yeah, but he would mess with Jack as well. And, you know, he was there when it was all starting, and he's fabulous. But he's like he's one of the biggest oversharers of the music community. And
he is. He talks a bit too much. I love Jeff, but sometimes. But I talk a bit too much too, so I'm not one to judge.
But you haven't been kicked out of Berkeley, I think it was.
Not yet.
I think it was.
Not yet.
His thing, and everybody you saw is gently grating the newsroom. He doesn't believe in the metronome at all. He thinks it's the West Day. And it's kind of interesting what he's saying. I think, of course, his idea is, if your fingers know well enough what they're doing, you will naturally play in time, because the body wants to naturally play in time. And that's his theory. And everything can be traced back to not knowing the notes well enough in a deep enough way. So that's kind of interesting. And anyway, so Asap went on tour with Jeff. I think it was around Europe. And so obviously it involves long drives and everything. And so Asap got under the Konnakol. This did not register with Jeff at all. I mean, Asaf, there was I think something went on Facebook was, you know, Asaf's great at this. Jeff thought it wasn't, he didn't see the benefit. He's bold, listen to James Brown or something like that, which I thought was curiously dismissive for these quite academic and lots of other ways.
Oh, very much so.
That was weird. I mean, he obviously loves what Asaf does on the drums, so he hired him for tours. Selling the Konnakol thing maybe is another conversation.
Well, it worked for John McLaughlin, didn't it? I did go through the DVD when I was younger.
Time for you. Sorry, I'm saying it. That goes back to what was,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
He can do the clever stuff, but that's not time for you, right?
Well, I would say he's got great timing mechanics.
Yeah.
But as far as time feel, he's not Schofield.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Or I just saw Robin Ford. Robin Ford had wonderful time feel. However, obviously the mechanics of his time are not going to be as developed as John McLaughlin's. It's a different thing, isn't it?
It's a bit.
No, it's different horses for different courses, isn't it?
But he also developed it just for the love of it. He got that kind of mathematical, or just a curiosity. But like, you know, the whole Apple's way. He just lived down the road from me in London. You know, but that sort of proximity you can only dream about when if beautiful as the northeast is, you don't necessarily have Asaf at the end of your street.
No.
And when you has, you go and you go to their flat and just do whatever they say, because, you know, it's booked up. So It's just maybe there's a joy of discovery in there as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I know a very prominent guitar player, a guy who I hugely look up to, and you'll all know his name. I won't mention him in the context of this conversation, but because it was in a private lesson with a friend that he said this, and he was talking down on Kurt Rosenwinkel's sense of time because it's not metronomic, because he clearly didn't study with the metronome in the same way as the players that I was talking before, like Wayne Krantz. However, as I said, I love this metronomic time feel like Wayne Krantz and Brian Baker, but I also love the looseness to a modern jazz player like Kurt or even Holdsworth. You know,
it comes back to, like, I think musicianship, because is it the Polish song he does?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah,
Sir, he's singing. He's singing everywhere. He's got a connection to the instrument. You know, that's he's in musicianship. I mean, obviously he can do he's done on mechanical stuff, but he really prioritizes basic musicianship. And I remember what kept one of him that started me off on all this is that, I mean, I thought I was an okay job of the chorus, that the dude designed depth, the harmonizations, all this sort of stuff. And there was the summer school at the Royal Academy of Music, led by two guys, some of you know the name of Barak Snool. And he was at the sort of there'll be species belonging to a thing called the Fire Collective. And it was among other things, there was a meetup where everybody learned Brazilian rhythms and the dance of the move. Anyway, so I had to look on the guitar, and the first thing he did, everyone was in a group. He says, right, to put down the instruments, you don't need them. You're all going to walk on the spot. And holy bit. And then the clapping started. And this is not Konnakol, this is just grooving and clapping. And then I think they pretty quickly got into quintuplets, which, you know, I was already at the door. Then the quintuplets started. Not only were it in quintuplets, it wasn't like
hippopotamus.
Yeah, they were singing different vowels, the different, like, or maybe they just, I don't know, a 2, 3 K and a pi. The 3 would be a different sound for the 2, or they've all mixed up. So there wasn't enough just to be able to feel the duplets. You had to think within the quintuplet, you know, and all the stuff that, like, man, I had a week of it. And I came around, like, utterly I just realized, you know, I mean, there was other musicians, I think some of them were part of this, they'd done it before. And I just realized there was a rhythmic scene out there which has evolved way beyond the jazz standards, the traditional way of music. You could get him back to kind of, African roots and that sort of thing. That you can't really ignore, that he can be part of, that the modern music scene.
Well, I agree. I mean, to finish off, I'll talk about that in the sense that when I realized my sense of time was lacking, it was very much at a time when I was trying to play with, when I was playing with drummers, and extremely good drummers. And I realized that they were so more advanced than me at time that obviously just through playing with them, I would learn so much. And obviously, this, as Rich has been going into, the study of time is vast. I would say it's more endless than the study of harmony. I would say it's a deeper subject than the study of harmony. And realizing how far behind I was from these drummers who to this day I look up to, just through playing with drummers who are extremely more experienced in the world of time. This is where I developed my time the most. It was through playing with other musicians. I would never talk down on exercises with a metronome. I've seen Nelson Veras demonstrate some wonderful timing exercises. with a metronome and everything. I think they're wonderful. I think they're good for developing your internal time. But I really don't think anything replaces playing with a drummer that really stretches your rhythmic ability. And as I say, I believe that this is the way that Kurt developed his time feel.
I don't know if you've got enough electronic parts of it, but there's a problem with it though. If you play with a good drummer, the good drummer can make you sound amazing, even if you're filing. Isn't funny. They can, in the mountains, you never throw it away. I mean, I think you had the advantage of coming in from a pretty enlightened state to begin with. Same with all these Nelson the Rapper side. Wrong with that.
No, I know what you mean as far as a good drummer playing for you. And I think it's good to play with a variety of different drummers. Some drummers, like a guy like Laurie Lau, I played with him and he would make me feel so comfortable. It would help me develop my sense of pulse. Everything, I could hear the time all the time. Whereas other drummers who were equally amazing, but in a different way, in a freer way, in a more Elvin Jones kind of way.
I think you're right. So if you analyze why a particular drummer doesn't make the feel the same way as another drummer does, there's something in that, right?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't want to just play with a drummer that made me feel comfortable. I took it as a weakness in myself if I didn't feel comfortable with another drummer, because I knew they understood the time perfectly, but it was me that was unable to follow them at certain moments because they were stretching me beyond my limits. And forcing to keep up with players like that really helped my time feel. Also simple things like not playing with a backing track and, you know, internally feeling the sense of time as you play, and making that a priority. As I say, without any backing tracks are very much a negative thing in many regards. You can just rely on them to keep the tempo. You want to be developing your own tempo and not using backing tracks. And then when you come to playing with a drummer, you'll be able to hold your own internal tempo, and you'll be able to match your internal tempos rather than just relying on following the drummer, which is never the intention with time. But, I mean, time is such a broad subject, and it's going to be something that
It absolutely, it's the core muscle or thread, which really pictures everything.
Well, yeah, hopefully my time is stronger than my six pack, or my lack of one.
But if we like your health problems or stoop or something, probably some dairy from some muscular
Weakness.
yeah. Somewhere. And I think it's a pretty fake analogy.
No, you're right. You're right. It's, yeah, it is the core strength. It is the fundamentals to anything you play. If you don't play, if what you play doesn't have a strong sense of time, no one, not even yourself, let alone a listener, will be able to make sense of it. But obviously, there's the whole other topics as we briefly went into, like time feel and everything. But I think we're gonna have to save that for another video, Rich. I think we're gonna go with. I think it's about time to go and get some food. But cheers for coming on today, Rich. And obviously we'll get you back on. Hopefully we'll be going to see Julian Large together. I think it's July or something. So, you know, we'll get your thoughts on Julian Large. Obviously, I've seen him before.
In North Beers, how do you know?
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah, hopefully he gets there in one piece. But yeah. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for your support on my channel. It was lovely to hit 2,000 subscribers. The Patreon is starting to get more busy, which is wonderful. And yeah, obviously all the links are in the description. And I'll be back with Alfie next time. You guys haven't seen Alfie for a while because I've been out with my brother and with Rich, but Alfie will be making an appearance next week. So yeah, look out for him. He's just chilling at home now. He won't be very happy, but he'll be back out next week with me when I'm on my own. So anyway, as always, guys, thanks for all the support, and I'll be back very shortly for another video.